We are broadcasting live.
So good morning, everyone. This is the council meeting for the town of Mono on Tuesday, January 9th, 2024. Happy New Year's, everyone. This meeting is being conducted both in chambers and by means of electronic participation as permitted by Section 238, subsection 3.1 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, and the Town of Mono Procedural Bylaw 2020-42. Residents can watch us live or later on the YouTube channel. We do have a quorum. Councillors Manctalo and Davey are joining us remotely today, but I'm going to indicate for the benefit of our spectators that the emergency exits are straight behind you. And members are free to declare pecuniary interest at this point or at any point in the course of the meeting. And I will be declaring on two matters having to do with the Orangeville Library. I'm wondering if, would you, yes, and if we could do the land acknowledgement, thank you.
We would like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that the town of Mono resides within the traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Teonatate, Adawandran, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe peoples. We also acknowledge that the town of Mono resides within the treaty lands named under Treaty 18, the Nottawasaga Purchase of 1818. These traditional territories upon which we live and learn are steeped in rich Indigenous history and traditions. It is with this statement that we declare to honor and respect the past and present connection of Indigenous peoples with this land, its waterways, and resources.
Thank you. I have a motion that Council approves the agenda of Session 1-2024 as circulated. Do I have a mover? Deputy Mayor Nix and Councillor Davey seconds. Any discussion of the agenda? Any opposed? That motion is carried. I have a motion that Council approves the minutes of Session 24, 2023 as circulated. Do I have a mover? Councillor Capes moves. Councillor Manctalo seconds. Any discussion of the minutes that were mailed to us? And seeing no opposition, that motion also passes. Public question period. Do we have any submitted questions?
We have one question submitted online in advance, Your Worship. And the question is, why does sidewalk snowplow put salt and sand down when there's no forecast for snow, rain, or ice, as this seems to be money being spent needlessly?
Okay, I'm going to defer to the Works Department on this.
Different days, different forecasts kind of warrant different approaches. We try to pre-treat as if we're hovering around the zero mark a lot of the time now. So it's something that we could look into a little bit more. I'll look into a little bit more, but generally if we're applying salt, it'll be in advance of an ice storm or to treat ice. We also use a mix of 50-50 sand and salt on the sidewalks or plow accordingly. We haven't been plowing much, but I will definitely look into the application and get a more of another answer, follow-up. But they're more than welcome to contact me for more information.
Thank you, Matt. Correct me if I'm wrong, but because we maintain the sidewalks, do we not have a liability exposure if we don't do it properly?
Yes, we have an MMS requirement to travel the sidewalks regularly.
Well, if we can check into the frequency and circumstances under which we pre-treat, I think that would be appreciated.
Yep.
Did I hear somebody online?
I was just agreeing with you with respect to that it's better to be wrong and put a little bit more sand and salt down than, or it's better to be, wrong about the weather, needlessly putting it down than to have there be ice and somebody slip and fall. Slip and fall injuries are nothing to laugh at or poo-poo. So that's all.
Good point. Any further questions, Fred?
None, Your Worship.
Okay. Anyone in the gallery have a question for us? Anyone online have a question? Okay. We have no delegations today. We do, however, have a list of unfinished business and deferred items. Any comments on our list? I think we'll be in a position to take at least one item off if we pass it today. Fred?
Yeah, I just have two comments. The one about purchasing property in Mono, it says the responsible party is council, and I know, I apologize, my memory's short. Who on council is doing that?
Elaine was.
Oh, okay, so
working on
that's,
So it's myself and Melinda, and we
Okay.
are meeting on that, so we should have something by the next council meeting.
good. And my second comment
Thanks for
was-
asking.
Okay. On the kite fighting bylaw, it says prepare in cooperation with Orangeville. Could I just point out, Mr. Clerk, that yes, certainly we have to look at what Orangeville's doing because they're apparently preparing a bylaw. But the last time I talked to them, it was going to be an outright ban on flying kites. And so I don't think we necessarily should follow in their footsteps. We should look at what they're doing, but we might want to be somewhat less restrictive. That would be just an opinion on my part. But I was worried when I read prepare in cooperation with Orangeville. It sounds like we're going to follow in what they're doing.
And we're currently in the process of examining bylaws from across the province as we can track them down, including Orangeville's.
I don't think Mary Poppins would be very happy living in Orangeville if they banned kite flying.
She used an umbrella, so it'd be okay.
Oh, there's a kite flying scene.
Yeah. We did, at the time, talk about not just kite flying, but anything that causes debris to be flying through the air and left in the trees and et cetera. Is that part of what you're looking at, Fred?
That's absolutely part of it. For example, we're looking into mass release of balloons.
And those balloons with
as,
fire in them and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff? Yeah.
helium. So we are trying to broaden what we're looking at to bring something to council that includes any debris that could be scattered from one property to another.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. And just one more if I could. So this is just a tiny little thing. So there's some new items on here, but they're not numbered. So we will number them all.
What numbers?
There's not a number beside them, so the firearms bylaw report, there's no number there? Is that
I don't see
a
any
continuation of number 5?
Where do you see any numbers?
Oh, there's numbers on the side
On
of them here.
the left-hand side.
They're numbered.
Yeah, it's got it, there's a space for a 6 there, it just isn't there, but then when you come down to the short-term rental.
It's not there either.
Yeah, no, but they're not in sequence, so it's just, yeah, some details on the.
Just for
formatting.
ease of reference, we say number 5, number 9, just a tiny little thing.
Okay.
And then I
Ralph?
wanted to ask about the large homes. The status says Q3 2024, following a public meeting. I'm not sure why that's Q3.
Thank you for your comment, Councillor Capes. No later than, hopefully we will get this earlier. We're still thinking and regrouping as to how we're going to deal with sort of the legal aspect prescriptions of this matter, given the outcome of the comments, actually some good fulsome comments from the meeting we had. So, no, my anticipation is we'll get it earlier than that, but certainly no later than that. So that's really what that target date is about.
Thank you. Ralph, I think you had your hand up?
I did, thank you, Your Honor. Could we have an update on the Hockley Valley Historic Community Hall and Church process? I'm aware that the Heritage Committee is involved with this, but I think that we were going to get a report from staff, an advisory report from them. Could we have an update?
Sorry, Councillor Menklow, you said the Hockley Historic Church, or Community Hall and Church update?
Yes, that's.
Yeah, so right now I'm waiting to hear back from the CAO from Agilitas Oranio. And the expectation of that is hopefully a meeting between their mayor, our mayor, and the two CAOs to come up with a plan on what the want or the will of Agilitas Oranio is to work with us on this matter. And should that not reveal anything, then Town of Mono will proceed with a report to council.
And that's distinct from the designation process, which we have members of the committee with us today who may be able to address that in the course of their participation. Anything else on the to-do list? Okay. Heritage Advisory Committee resolution of advice on the seventh line heritage designation. Ralph?
Yeah, question, should I excuse myself? I guess remotely there is a possibility of some pecuniary value to this. I'm just looking for advice.
Well, we can't advise you one way or another. I know what I would do and what I did when my house was up for designation. It can impact,
Okay, well,
it can impact you and not negatively.
Right, so I will excuse myself, and you'll have an empty screen, and I'll come back when we're finished.
Okay, thank you.
He's already left. Okay. So Councillor Manctolo, if you could just state clearly for the record for me, please, the reason for your recusing yourself from this item?
The reason I'm excusing myself is because of the possibility of pecuniary implications to the designation.
And that's because you are the property owner?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're actually looking at the property as you're on screen. Would you like to come up and tell us a little bit about the process on this particular designation? Thank you.
You've probably all read the report, I hope,
Yes.
and the crux of the designation. Well, we're proposing that the exterior envelope be designated in its entirety. There are two buildings. There's a log outbuilding, and then there's the main house. The main house is made up of an original 1.5-story cottage and a 2-story addition. The original log cabin, we think, was built in the early 1830s. We think the original frame cottage was built in the 1850s, and we think the 2-story Gothic addition was built in the late 1870s, early 1800s, we think, based on the chain of title and the value of the building. But in our opinion, the thing that's really interesting about the property is just that it's this great juxtaposition or representation of the evolution of the settlement era of Mono being the 1800s, that you start with a log house, then you get to make a little bit of money, or your farm becomes somewhat prosperous, and then you get to build a frame house with a second story, not a second story, but a story and a half, and then another 20 or 30 years goes by and you can afford to build a 2-story addition on the front. So it's this nice pattern of advancement basically through the same family, the Cobian family, which is a well-established family on that 7th line strip there. And I'm not aware of many other properties in Mono that show this evolution of architecture through that settlement period. So we
Kirsten,
think,
if I could just get you to state your name for the record.
I'm sorry, it's Kirsten Ball.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we think that's really the crux of the designation.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Kirsten?
No?
Yes, Melinda.
I have a question. Thank you very much, Kirsten. Great report. Nice house, Ralph. My question is, when you say that it's the exterior envelope that you want to designate, but then when it went into description about it's all new. All the siding is new and all that. So what exactly, like with the log cabin, you can see that it's a building there whereas this one, yeah, how does that work?
Good question. So obviously, the log cabin is not new. Those are original logs. The frame cottage, a lot of the frame cottage and a lot of the Gothic structure are in fact original. The framing obviously is all original. And yes, there is new siding. However, it's more about the proportion and the style of the building. Even though it's been re-sided, it still is its original form, and the gingerbread is still original. The elements that make it Gothic Revival, are still intact. So,
Great, thanks very much.
okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? I have a motion that Council receive the Heritage Advisory Committee designation report dated December 12th, 2023, and that Council directs staff to issue notice of intent to designate 95321 7th line EHS Mono, and that is described as the west part of Lot 6, Concession 8 EHS, under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, RSO 1990, Section 18, as recommended by the Town of Mono Heritage Advisory Committee, and that the clerk proceed with the notification requirements as set out in the Ontario Heritage Act. Do I have a mover? Councillor Davies, seconded by Deputy Mayor Nix. Any further discussion, debate? Any opposed? And it's carried unanimously, save for our declaration. Thank you very much for your work on that. It's greatly appreciated. Next item is a motion that I'm proposing having to do with road safety in our community, and taking the lead from a number of motions that have been passed Canada-wide declaring a climate emergency. This is proposing to declare a road safety emergency for a variety of different reasons. And the content of the motion is basically an amalgamation of things that have been sent to the minister over the last few years, and statements of concern that we've had regarding our frustration with increasing accidents on our roads. I've tried to footnote this as best I could in a series of endnotes, and I'm prepared to read it or entertain any questions or comments.
I think it's fine.
This will be very helpful at Roma if I'm ultimately successful in getting an appointment with the minister.
Can you read it in?
Oh, yes, absolutely, and then I'll just comment. Whereas road safety is of continuing and increasing concern to Ontarians, and whereas the number of traffic collisions, injuries, and fatalities are at unacceptable levels, and whereas recent statistics and media reports show increasing fatalities and police roadway activities, and whereas speeding is a leading contributing factor in many accidents, including fatalities, and whereas fines for basic speeding have not increased for 3 decades or more, thus losing at least 50% of their deterrent value through inflation, and whereas over 60% of all other Highway Traffic Act set fines remain at $85, an amount that also suggests no increase in decades, and whereas municipalities are frustrated in their attempt to roll out automated speed enforcement with current rules that restrict it to less than 80 km/h zones and make it contingent upon declaring community safety zones were not warranted except to use ASE, and whereas administrative penalties, AMPs, are the logical and effective means of dealing with offenses including parking violations, red light camera infractions, and ASE charges. The regulations involving its use are mired in red tape leading to unnecessary complexity and cost. Be it resolved that we call on other municipalities and the province to recognize a road safety emergency and take the following actions. Number one, launch a province-wide road safety educational program to be funded from a portion of the monies currently spent by the, and I've amended this slightly, Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation, otherwise known as OLG, to advertise games of chance and lotteries in Ontario. Number two, review and increase all HTA fines and penalties to reflect a deterrent amount and consequence that sends a message that driving is a privilege subject to conditions. Three, permit municipalities to deploy ASE in 80-kilometer-per-hour zones or less without having to declare community safety zones and without onerous conditions. Number four, establish a working group with municipalities to identify and recommend elimination of regulatory red tape associated with the use of ASE and AMPS. Five, develop mechanisms that ensure POA fines and penalties do not lose their deterrent effect over time. And finally, work with municipalities to create better means of collecting outstanding provincial offense fines and victim surcharge monies estimated now to exceed $1 billion, and that was a figure not estimated to exceed $1 billion as far back as 2011. So that's my motion. Do I have a mover? Yes. Councillor Capes, seconded by Councillor Davy. Just a few words, if I can. The idea here is to try and get municipalities to join in on this, so we would be circulating to all Ontario municipalities. Number two, it may look like a bit of a word salad, but it essentially is an amalgamation of all of the themes that we've been talking about for years now. Some of the things that may look a little obscure, when I was suggesting a road safety education program, I was prepared for somebody at the province to say, well, where's the money going to come from? And I thought, well, you're spending untold millions of dollars advertising games of chance and lotteries. Why not take some of those monies and put it into a road safety campaign? I will be filing a Freedom of Information request of the OLG to find out exactly how much money they do spend on advertising games of chance. Finally, the statistics, I think, speak for themselves, but one of the interesting things is relative to the sixth section about the uncollected and outstanding POA fines and victim surcharge monies. So the estimate is from a report that was prepared by the Ontario Police Service Boards Association. It's a really excellent document, and it has a whole host of suggestions, including having an arrangement with the federal government to be able to garnish income tax refunds and monies paid by the federal government to individuals if those individuals are in default on POA fines. Now, this may sound to be, sort of punitive and arbitrary, but it's already being done in at least two Canadian provinces. So we're completely behind the eight ball, relying exclusively on collection agencies. And as you know, collection agency takes 20% off the top minimum for their activities, if they're successful at all. While the figure was estimated at over $1 billion as far back as 2011, the current amount of unpaid fines in Dufferin County alone is $4 million. And of that, a good portion of that unpaid money is for victim surcharge fines or victim surcharges. And those go to places like family transition place and all kinds of good work that is being done. And I do not understand for the life of me why the province isn't concerned about collecting those monies so that they have more to give out to organizations such as Family Transition Place. Any questions? Yes.
First of all, thank you for the motion, and thank you for the footnotes. That's good research and good information. I wanted to just ask for clarification on the be it resolved that we call on other municipalities and the province to take these actions, or are we calling on the other municipalities to support asking the province to take these actions? Because I'm not sure
So it's
what actions are for the province and what are for the municipalities. Just, I'm not
well,
clear.
it's two things. Number one, that we declare a road safety emergency and that we call on the province to join us in that, and we call on other municipalities to do so. And then to take the following actions, 1 through 6. Obviously, it's a joint effort with the province in most instances.
Okay.
We can't do it without them. Melinda?
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is terrific, and we really need to do something. It sounds great. And I don't understand how people don't pay the victim surcharges. Does that mean that they haven't paid their speeding ticket? And there's a million bucks worth in $4 million worth in Dufferin County of people who don't pay their fines? Then how are they driving around getting more fines?
So the victim surcharge is usually 20% of the fine. And if you don't pay the fine, you're not paying the victim surcharge either. So
Well, right, so people just don't pay fines?
that's right.
That's
That's
just
right.
shocking. Okay, thank you. My other question is just the format of that I mean, it's a great idea. You kind of wonder how come we have so much lottery money, and I mean, it clearly is also an emergency, the gambling problems. But
Yeah.
can we direct where they get the money from to do things? Like, does that strengthen this motion, or does it kind of, they might think out of hand that the money's already spent in other places, and who are you to tell us what to do?
Well, I wanted to basically, forestall a suggestion that, well, where's the money going to come from? So I'm suggesting a pool of money that one could have a great problem with, in as much as it does, as you say, promote for what is, for many people, an addiction. And we only need to turn on our TVs to see the evidence of the lottery promotion, both by the OLG and now third parties. So I just wanted to be able to say, hey, you don't have an excuse here. Here's a pool of money that you can use, and the public will thank you for it.
So should we have some word in there like may use or could be, or it just is so directive, your statement?
Well, I'd rather put them on the spot to say why they can't do it. In other words, if we say may, then they'll just brush it off. But if we say you should, well, why not? So I wanted to be a little firm on that. Ralph? You're muted.
There we are. Thank you.
There you go.
Your Honor, what's the starting process for collecting or for pursuing outstanding fines?
So once you, truth be known, a great many fines are paid without a single court appearance. You get a speeding ticket, you pay it. If you go to trial and you're convicted, you are given usually 60, 90 days to pay, and then a lot of people just take off, and they don't pay. And they do get reminders from the POA administration. There's a possibility that a staff member may call and say, you have an overdue fine. But the reality is that you can get away without paying post-conviction in court. There's even a very famous example of a propane explosion in North Toronto many years ago. I think it was Sunshine or something like that. And they had about $1 million penalty assessed against them. And I remember hearing years later, never paid. And the 20% victim surcharge, which would have been attached to that, obviously would not be collected either. So it's a real problem. Any,
Sure.
Fred? Anyone else? Anyways, the motion has been read, and it has a mover and a seconder, and thank you for support. Any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Next item is the amendment to dog bylaw, livestock guardian dogs. And Fred, do you have a report for us on that?
So council will recall that this was in response to a letter by the Ontario Sheep Farmers for municipalities to consider guardian livestock dogs in their animal control bylaws. They don't give a lot of ideas or suggestions on what they'd like to see in those bylaws, other than that they should be worded in such a way as to not hamper farmers in the use of those animals. In a review of a number of bylaws where these have been incorporated, I've come up with a number of suggestions and recommendations for council. So first of all, I've used the definition as provided by the Ontario Sheep Farmers. I've seen that used by a number of other municipalities, though not exclusively. One of the concerns raised by the Ontario Sheep Farmers is the fact that these animals do bark, right? That's part of their job. So the Ontario Sheep Farmers would like to see that included in any bylaws, that a farmer's not penalized if a guardian dog, livestock guardian dog, is barking particularly at night or in the evening, because again, that's part of their job for protecting livestock. So that's been incorporated into the amendments I'm proposing. I am suggesting that these animals do get licensed and tagged, though. And this is specifically if one were to be running at large off of the farmer's property, we'd be able to identify it if it's tagged and get it back to its proper owner, and we wouldn't be spending time and resources trying to figure out, impounding and holding this animal as we try to find the owner. Tag obviously will make that much easier. If it's going to be tagged and licensed, then there's going to have to be a fee to help offset it. I've recommended the minimum fee that we currently charge, which is for animals that are spayed or neutered, though it doesn't matter whether the livestock guardian dog is spayed or neutered. We're not penalizing the farmer by charging more for an unspayed or unneutered animal as we would for other dogs. So I've recommended that. And finally, in order to help ensure that these animals are being used for the stated purpose, the amendments require that the owner has to provide a valid farm business registration number. So all of those items are incorporated into this amendment that I'm proposing.
So I'm going to read the motion, then we can have questions and discussion. That we introduce and give the necessary readings to a bylaw to amend bylaw 2002, 62, being a bylaw to provide for the keeping, control, and licensing of dogs in the town of Mono, that it be signed by the mayor and clerk for the town of Mono, sealed and engrossed in the bylaw book. Do I have a mover for that? Deputy Mayor Nix, seconded by Councillor Mangtalo. Discussion, questions? Fred?
I think it's a very good report, and I'm all for it. And I thank the clerk for doing the work on this. We get one item removed from our to-do list, finally.
Melinda, then Ralph, then Elaine.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, thanks, Fred. This is great. I just see a couple of problems, though. I mean, when you watch our social media pages, the Orangeville one and the new Mono one and the Mono one, there's a lot of and lost dogs in Dufferin and so on. There are a lot of apparently guardian dogs. They usually seem to go in pairs, and they're big, huge dogs, and that roam. And so people who don't know that know their they put it on the Facebook, and then the comments are oh, leave the dog alone. The dog knows where it's going to go home. And so it's a fairly regular occurrence in the community that the guardian dogs are not just guarding the property that is the farm, but that they're off and so on. So asking them to license them and tag them and everything is important. I think that there are a lot of people who disregard that as being something that's important in our community to do. But if we're going to say that they, and I guess they don't have to be, nobody has to spay and neuter their animal, but then aren't they then risking, the reason why we do want to spay and neuter animals is that if they do leave the property, that they are potentially a problem for people's pets, that then they'll have unwanted puppies. It seems, this is good, but I'm just wondering whether there are still some problems that we're still going to have with the guardian dogs and the bylaw.
I can provide some historic context here. Back in 1991, the main election issue at the time was the dog tag fee, fine, not fee, was fee. And we decided to differentiate between spayed and neutered versus non-spayed and neutered with a financial incentive to get your dog spayed and neutered as opposed to leaving them as is. But if you can believe it, that was the hot issue in that election. And I think former Councillor Martin, who's joined us today, will remember that. Ralph.
I think this is a good bylaw. Melinda has brought up an interesting point. And I have some experience with this because when we had a flock of sheep, we had about 120 ewes. We had the Great Pyrenees, and they're very effective. Usually they're not, in my experience, which is limited of course, is that they're only one dog or flock, and that does very well. Once you start having more than one dog, then there's much more chance that they wander. My understanding is that they will still be limited by the same item number 4, control of dogs running at large. No owner shall permit any dog to run at large in the town. In fact, when we got our second one, we got it because Ron, who worked with the farming, thought the first dog should have a friend, and the friend went wandering down the street and would check in for a chicken sandwich or something, and then he would come back and say, "Hey, look, there's a place up the street here. They give out chicken sandwiches. Why don't you come with me?" And so they lost their ability. These dogs must live with the flock, and they do not. If they're doing their job, they do not leave either the barnyard or the pasture, and that's what a good guard dog was. I'm interested in the name Guardian. I looked it up because I thought, I'll never call it a guardian dog, it's a guard dog, but in fact, both names are used, and so I think it's quite suitable to keep the name Guardian, as guard dog tends to go along with watchdog, something to protect humans, whereas these dogs are protecting livestock, and they do it extremely well. A comment on the barking issue, that is how they tell the coyotes that there's a big dog there in the barn and don't come any closer, so that they do bark, and they're very, 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 very effective. So I don't have any changes to suggest for this. I think just to be sure that if they're running at large, they are governed by the same regulations that involve any dog that's running at large.
Any further questions, comments? Melinda, did you have your hand up? And then
Well,
Councillor
well,
Capes.
yes,
Yeah, sorry.
thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I mean, that is the issue, right? To impress upon because I guess the idea of a guardian dog and on the farm, and whether the dog is actually really working for you or it's just your outside dog because you've had a farm forever and we've always had outside dogs. But does the dog actually function to guard your flock? As you say, I guess it doesn't if they're wandering regularly. But as long as we're still, it's the education thing, right? To impress upon all of our residents, the ones in the subdivisions, that their dogs need to be tied and so on when they're out on the sidewalk, and also the dogs that are allowed on farms, but it's not to go outside of their property. So this will, now that we've done, oh, there's an animal right there. So now that we've done this if we do this new bylaw, then it will get front and center on our website for a while, so that so that we ensure that everybody is refreshed on dog etiquette. Fred?
Go ahead, and then I'll double back on the web question. Elaine?
So, thank you for this, and thank you for putting in the licensing and the requirement to show certification that you are indeed running a flock of something and need guard dogs, because I think that's important. At first, I was a little bit worried about removing the maximum for 3 dogs, but I have talked to some people, and they say sometimes you need 5 dogs if you've got a huge herd of 300 sheep. But I think I would be cautious about that and only exceed the maximum 3 dogs with proof of the number of flocks, the number of sheep, because I think we open ourselves up to some kind of challenge if people just start having 5 dogs and 6 dogs and they've only got a flock of 20 sheep. So especially if they're not neutered, because if they're not neutered, they're gonna have all kinds of more guard dogs. So I worry about that. I don't know how we, when they present a certificate to say that they are licensed, how many is in their flock? And that should dictate the number of dogs they have somehow. I don't want to overcomplicate, but I get worried that it's going to become an unsort of written license for people to let dogs breed on their properties. So that's a concern I have. The other thing, I was looking through the whole bylaw because it was presented to us, so I read the whole thing, and I was just curious about how often we inspect kennels and how often we review the kennel list and when we last confirmed ownership of those kennels, because I do know that there is a kennel mentioned in Schedule D that is not updated.
So for
you
the
don't-
2 actual running businesses, they are issued licenses annually and not until they've had an inspection done by our canine control company. So those are inspected annually and issued licenses. The third one on there, I don't know the complete history of, but I've been led to believe that that was never actually an active running kennel, that was put in there for some other purposes. But there's no business, and therefore there's no license
to dog
issued
hotel.
for that business to operate as such.
Right, so the Keon Kennels is listed under the wrong owner, because that property was sold to their son Sean.
Right, so their
So-
license is up to date. We
It's in
just have-
Sean's name, yeah.
Right, so the license is issued to the current owners. We haven't gone back and amended the bylaw. When this issue came up about livestock guardian dogs, the directions from council were specific to not review the
Any other
bylaw in its
pieces.
entirety.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And if I may, on the idea of not being limited to the 3 animals, that wasn't specific that you could have more than 3 livestock guardian dogs, which you could, but it's also, you could have companion animals as well. So you could still have 2 or even 3 companion dogs and have livestock guardian dogs. The idea was to not limit your ability to have a companion animal by virtue of having livestock guardian dogs.
Thank you, because I didn't read it that way, so thank you for that clarification.
And Ralph?
Thank you. The issue of the number of dogs is something I think we should deal with, because this could be an issue that gets away from us. My experience is that you need a second livestock guardian dog if you have animals in different pastures or different areas, and that's the main reason. Otherwise, a single dog could take care of a flock of almost any size. I would say that we should keep with the limit to 3 dogs, and if a person has a need for more, they can apply to us and have an exemption.
So Fred, I think what is being suggested is keep it as it is, but be flexible if we get a persuasive argument to make an exception.
So we'll have to actually word that into the bylaw, right? We can't have a bylaw that says you're limited to 3 without it having something in the wording to say you can apply under these terms and conditions.
But only for guard dogs.
Specifically, and again, that it would have to say only for guard dogs. So I will bring back an amended bylaw that includes that. I'm not sure that we could be specific. The application would have to somehow, the applicant would have to provide justification. I don't think we can get into the position of telling a farmer what the appropriate number of livestock guardian dogs is based on a criteria like number of livestock. Because there's going to be so many other things, terrain,
Right.
different animals. It would have to be up to the farmer, and we'd have to probably give some sort of idea on what we would consider as suitable reasons. Or that would have to come to council, and council would have to make that determination. So that's why the recommendation was to leave it, up to the farmer to decide for themselves and just remove that restriction of 3 animals.
Melinda?
Thank you very much. That's a very good point, Ralph and Elaine. And I guess the idea is to really just, I've got 3 and I'd love another one, but you want people to follow the rules and so the worry that there would be people who abused a new thing to have a farm business and also have more just, a breeding kind of a thing, particularly if they were unfixed. So I can see that it's a tricky thing, but if we did have that, you just had to come to council if you wanted to go more than that. We're allowing the guardian dogs, and we've got all these extra things for the guardian dogs and so on. But if you want more, if you're going to have in total more than 3 dogs, then it's an individual. We need to look at you individually. And it's not to say that you won't be able to have one more, but at least we're able to control it and know where there are lots of dogs, right?
So we have a motion on the floor. There's a suggestion that maybe we hold off pending a slight amendment.
Your Honor?
Yes, Ralph?
I think that's a good idea. Fred has suggested a number of possibilities. And I think as Melinda just said, if you word it in such a way that if you would feel you have a need for it and you can justify it, you present this to council and council makes a decision. I don't think it'd be a very difficult decision for council if somebody comes to them and says, I've got 4 different fields here and such, and I've got 4 or 5 dogs, and you'd say yes. So we're not being taken for a fool, I think.
Yeah.
I think we should have this redone and bring it back with that option that additional bonds could be maintained at the discretion of council.
Okay, so we need to have the mover and seconder withdraw the motion.
If I may, your worship, if the motion were to be amended to state that we introduce and give first reading.
Ah, yes, yes, okay. So mover and seconder content with first reading on this? Okay, calling the question, is there anyone opposed to first reading? So it passes first reading. I will vacate the chair for the library board agreement.
Yeah, our next item is a motion to renew our agreement with the Orangeville Library Board, and I think, or Orangeville Library. I think, Fred Simpson, you have a report. Would you like to comment on it?
So this has been an annual renewal for the last number of years. The price is going up slightly, $10 per household. It will not affect the 2024 budget because it was budgeted such to accommodate for an increase like this.
Do I have a motion? I can read just that we introduced and give, that's probably the motion, right? Or it's over here. It's okay, I can find it. Is this it? No, that's not it.
It's number 6.
Okay, thank you. Let me, let me put the motion on the floor, and then we can have a discussion. That we introduce and give the necessary readings to a bylaw authorizing the town of Mono to enter into a service fee collection agreement with the Orangeville Library Board for 2024, substantially in the form as attached as Schedule A to the bylaw, and that it be signed by the deputy mayor, clerk for the town of Mono, sealed and engrossed in the bylaw book. Do I have a mover and seconder? Capes and Davy? Discussion. Anyone on council want to comment on this? Melinda?
Hey, thanks, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, my concern with it is that, you know, I've been on council now a couple of years, and we talk about this every year. And it's kind of like we're always going to have an agreement with, because so many of our residents are so close to Orangeville that is the library that's closest to them that they're going to use. We have had previously a multi-year term. In that multi-year term, it looked like there were increases in the agreement. I would propose that we agree with this one, but then ask, can we have a multi-year going forward?
I personally think that's an excellent suggestion, and I would ask the clerk, I mean, I think I'm all in agreement, we should sign this annual agreement, and then maybe the clerk could inquire as to why we couldn't enter into a 3 or 4 year agreement. Is that possible?
Absolutely, we can ask Orangeville. If they're amenable, then we should be able to come up with one.
Okay, any further discussion? Your hand's not up, okay. All in favor? Opposed? The motion passes. I guess I'll sign these. We can call the mayor back in, and just for the audience's sake to know we're going, in 7 minutes, we're going in camera. Mr. Creelman, if you can hear me, the item has been dealt with. You can come back. Oh.
Don't worry about those, Fred. I have to print new ones because we didn't pass the previous bylaw, so it's misnumbered.
Oh, so I'll just leave them here. Okay.
Actually, you can sign the agreement more later.
I did sign the agreement.
Okay, but I'll need a new bylaw.
Oh, the bylaw, yeah, okay. I think our mayor not only recused himself, but he's really recused. You can come back in. Yes. We thought we'd lost you.
The next item on the agenda is a Enbridge Gas Franchise Agreement renewal. Fred, are you in a position to speak to this?
So this is something that the town does every 20 years. So these agreements are mandated by the province. They're overseen by the Ontario Energy Board. The terms and conditions of the agreement are set by the province. So this is a process in which council passes a bylaw giving authority to enter into the agreement. Enbridge then sends that to the Ontario Energy Board. They give their authority and approval. It comes back to council for final passing of the bylaw and entering into the agreement. So today is giving first and second reading to a bylaw to give permission to enter into this agreement with Enbridge. We have this, of course, because we have just under 2,000 customers that are serviced by Enbridge Gas in Mono.
Do we get any revenue from them?
I have to defer that to the treasurer.
Yes, we do. There's a commercial tax rate for pipeline, and that refers to the gas companies.
And how is it calculated? Is it length of,
I'm not sure that's big.
Yeah.
There is an assessed value assigned to the pipelines, and it's just multiplied by the tax rate.
okay. Because they are using our right-of-way.
Yes.
Okay, I have a motion here, be it hereby resolved that this council approves the form of draft bylaw and franchise agreement attached hereto and authorizes the submission thereof to the Ontario Energy Board for approval pursuant to provisions of Section 9 of the Municipal Franchises Act. And number two, this council requests that the Ontario Energy Board make an order declaring and directing that the assent of the municipal electors to attach draft bylaw and franchise agreement pertaining to the corporation of the town of Mono is not necessary pursuant to provisions of Section 9, subsection 4 of the Municipal Franchises Act. Do I have a mover? Councillor Capes, seconded by Councillor Davy. Somewhat formal language.
Yeah.
I was tripping over myself reading it. Okay, I guess that's what they want, yes.
I just find it interesting that we have to enter in this agreement, and thank you for that pre-introduction to this, because I didn't know all that. Why should we have to share the relocation costs unless we're asking them to relocate? Like, if they have it and they put it in and they want to move it, then why do we have to share the costs? Like, why is this costing us money?
I'm not sure it does.
Well, it says that on
sure.
item number 12,
So-
pipeline relocation.
As
I read that
noted, the
right.
agreement is been provided to us without the option to amend it, because the agreement also says that Enbridge Gas can abandon the pipeline if they so
Right.
choose.
Right.
I cannot enlighten you, unfortunately, council, on any, why the agreement is worded the way it is.
Shouldn't cost us money.
Councillor
May
Davy?
I ask? Well, I guess it shouldn't cost us, except that the diagram and everything shows that this is a pipeline that, and you say it's at every 20 years, and so it's up for renewal, that this is the pipeline that serves our Mono town. And weren't they going to put another pipeline in to go just bypass Mono? This has nothing to do with that, right? Even though, right? This has nothing to do with that, I'm asking.
Yeah, Mike, I think, attended a meeting on that.
Yeah, so that was the first meeting, public meeting of the EA where they were going to start with respect to twinning or enlarging the pipeline to service Dundalk. They included Highway 10. Second and third options were the Blind Line and here Ontario Street, but Highway 10 is their optimum route. But save and except that the province would put up some roadblocks for them. The Ministry of Transportation, they would be looking at here Ontario and Highway, the Blind Line, so.
And my recommendation, Mike, was that there was no option for residents or businesses to tap into that pipeline.
So the short answer that night at the public information session was no, that this was a high-pressure line, large diameter to service Dundalk. But the detailed answer was, should they start to look at the Blind Line or here Ontario, they may also look at running a smaller line parallel to the high-pressure line that would service the residents of Mono, because the high-pressure lines do not service residents. They are from point transportation of gas, yeah. So furthermore, Your Worship, if I may, to Councillor Capes. So similar, the cost of relocation of the pipeline. So basically, there was a similar paragraph in the Rogers fiber agreements that should the town make amendments to the roadworks pre their 10-year capital investment plan, then we would be responsible for the moving of the pipeline, the Rogers fiber, should we not have planned properly. That's why the town is so adamant about the location of our pipes, cables, and bell cables, et cetera, inside of the right-of-way, is so that roadworks can commence without impeding or having to relocate. So we have the final say with respect to design drawings that are submitted to the Public Works Department with respect to the installation of new pipes, but we would be caught on any old pipes. But generally, they'd be 4 to 5 foot deep. So provided we're not doing any structures or anything, we should be clear. And gas is pretty good at keeping things away from the middle of the road, where a bell may not be. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion or debate? Any opposed to the passage of this motion? Motion is carried. And we are now going to go in camera.
Can I get a coffee and a washroom before you?
Yeah, let's take a 5-minute. Stan, can we have 5 minutes?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We are back live.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I have a motion that council move into a closed meeting pursuant to section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended at 9 minutes past 10 a.m. for Aragon Residential Development OLT hearing, section 239, subsection 2, subsection E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. Do I have a mover? Councillor Capes seconds, and Deputy Mayor Nix. Councillor Capes moves, seconded by Deputy Mayor Nix. So if we can now go in camera.
We are back live.
Thank you. And I have a motion, whereas Town Council has received, reviewed, and considered the advice of the town solicitor together with the town's notice of...
Excuse me, if I may intervene, Your
Sorry.
Worship. We do need to rise
yeah.
from in camera first.
My apologies. I have a motion that we rise from an in-camera session at 10:46 a.m. and that council accepts the advice from the town solicitor and directs that town staff and the town solicitor proceed accordingly. Do I have a mover? Councillor Capes, seconded by Councillor Manctalo. Any opposed? Now, I have a motion. Whereas Town Council has received, reviewed, and considered the advice of the town solicitor, together with the town's notice of motion, including the advice and opinions of Mike Dunmore, Chief Administrative Officer, Gord Feniak, R.J. Burnside, Town Engineer, and Nick McDonald, Meridian Planning, Town Counseling Partner. Now, therefore, Council resolves as follows. Number 1, that Council accepts the advice and opinions as provided. Number 2, that Council has determined that proposed servicing of the Aragon lands before the tribunal by a small-scale communal wastewater treatment system requiring town involvement and oversight, including a municipal responsibility agreement, is not in the public interest, and number 3, that as a result, the town solicitor shall advise the tribunal that council shall not be entering into a municipal responsibility agreement and/or ownership of a small-scale communal wastewater treatment system. And number 4, that the town solicitor be directed to finalize the town's motion record and include this resolution as part of that record. Do I have a mover to that? Deputy Mayor Nix, seconded by Councillor Capes. Any further discussion on this? Any questions? Any opposed to the motion? Seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Stan.
Thank you. So I'll be leaving. Council, thank you very much.
Thank you. And please extend our thanks to your associate for the work that he did over the holidays and the work that you did as well. It was
Well, thank you very much.
terrific effort. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Okay. So we're back to the budget. Les Haluka, do you have any amplification of the very excellent memo that you prepared?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. In summary of my memo, I think council knows the background. We had a few kicks at the can, as you say. The last meeting, council directed staff 6% increase, which required approximately $359,000 reduction in costs or increase in revenues. Basically, it has been a tough budget this year. We have experienced cost increases from external sources, like our fire services. Property insurance has gone up by 10%. Materials and supplies such as winter sand and salt, 25%. And these kind of costs keep coming up and up. Another example is a reduction in provincial grants. In 2024, approximately $75,000 in provincial grants was reduced. Well, that's almost 1% over this budget. In the last 2 budgets, there's been a reduction of almost $224,000 in grants. Now, I don't have that in my memo, but that's another 2.5% of the tax rate pressure on our budget. So the external forces on our budget is making life difficult. Now, the result is a 6% budget was achieved at council's direction. On the second page of the memo, I have a summary of the highlight of the big expenses. The one in roads administration, $25,000. $28,000 of that was the emergency planning reserve that we did every year. We cut that out. In planning, it was a reduction of 197,500. Two sources of that. One of them being the potential hearings coming up. We're figuring it's going to be over a 2-year period, so we're kind of spreading the cost over 2 budgets. And then with the heavy workload in the planning department, the official plan update, didn't think that would happen all of this year. Again, we're phasing that over 2 years, so we cut that budget in half. Gravel resurfacing, there's been much discussion on gravel resurfacing. We reduced it by 50,000, but I want to point out, we are not reducing any roads that are being gravelled. What we're doing, talking to Director of Public Works, he had said we could apply cheaper material on some of the sections of the roads that don't require, I guess, the limestone. So that's about a $50,000 saving. So it's more of a material saving versus a route coverage saving. And then I went through our reserve chart and pulled additional reserves to finance the capital more in line what the reserve was set up. So that was an additional almost $50,000 there. So bottom line, 6% tax increase, and recommending a passage by council. And then once council passes this, I'll bring back tax rate bylaw.
So, Deputy Mayor?
Thanks, Les. I honestly, I don't know how you did it. A couple of comments. One, I went to your budget page, and yes, it's 6%, so I'm happy you did it. I will say, though, that on this page of your memo, I was a bit confused, because if you add up all the things that you've cut.
No, it doesn't add up, you're right. This is
right,
just a
that's-
summary. There's a lot of itty bits all through.
Okay, that's
and
confused me, but I went to the, okay.
Yes, it does
But
not
here's-
add up.
but here's the other, it's a comment, it's not a question, and I'm speaking to Matt here. Because I'm worried about down the road. I mean, for the last 2 years, we've cut and scraped, which we have to, and I compliment you on doing it, but I think we're building up problems. So I'm gonna make the suggestion, not for this year. We've got to seriously think of cutting back on some of the services we provide to our residents, because we just don't have the money. And Matt, we can't cut back on policing, we can't cut back on fire, we can't cut back on snow plowing, we can't cut back on all those things. But we have 2 big capital items where I think, quite frankly, although it's messy, if we have to do it, we could do it. And one is the Huron-Ontario Bridge. We could simply say, sorry, folks, we don't have the money to do this, and put up a sign, bridge closed. And the other is your excellent gravel program, which I agree with, and that limestone gravel you're putting down is great, and I don't know if it gets finished this year, but, you know, we could just tell if there's more in future years, we could just say simply to our residents, we don't have the money. So this isn't for this year's consideration, Les. I'm just saying that I'm worried about the long-term implications of last year's budget and this budget, that we've cut back so much. I think we're gonna have to seriously next year think of cutting back some services.
Elaine?
First of all, I just want to express my appreciation to Les for his continuous dedication to looking for reductions, to senior staff for being flexible and collaborative, to members of the public who have sent emails with questions and suggestions for them engaging in our budget process. I appreciate that. To members of council for the suggestions and comments that have been put forward. I do have, I really appreciate where we are. I do have questions about a couple of things that we've done, and I'm nervous. Well, let me ask this question. So somebody in the public asked the question about mileage. So I was talking to a few people about this and claiming mileage. And they said in their company, they don't let people claim mileage, because once you start using your own vehicle as a work vehicle, your insurance company may not cover you, because they'll say, well, when did this accident happen? oh, you were using it for work. You're not covered for that. So that kind of raises alarm bells for me, so I don't know anything about that. I'm sure Les does. So that's one thing, so I'll let you respond to
That
that.
very point on insurance for your vehicle has been brought up in past years, and we do advise staff to contact their insurance to let them know. I mean, there is a small bump up in their premium, but they are covered if they have to be honest with their insurance, and we do advise staff to let their insurance know.
Awesome. So that was a worry for me. The other thing is that sometimes if mileage is going to be a lot, it's better to rent a car, or should we have a car that people use for staff business? Just another question. I'm not sure how that works for us, and maybe as per Fred's comments, that's a thought for next year. I'm not sure. But I did add that up, and I could be completely wrong, but that's $29,425 that I found. Maybe that's not the right number. I did find there was a lot of mileage, and is there any opportunity to have a staff vehicle that would offset that cost? Is it cheaper to have a car for future considerations? Yeah. The other thing, I was nervous, and I think Councillor Manctalo would join me on this. I'm concerned about our climate activity, and I know that we have $10,600 that we can use for council donations, and my thought, is that we not do those donations, and that we instead actually bring back into the budget the tree program subsidy and the living snow fence. So the living snow fence for me, and I could be corrected by staff, is important for public safety. So the living tree fencing is to stop drifting of snow onto the roadways. And that can be very treacherous here, as we know. So I really get nervous about taking that out of the budget, and also about the tree subsidy program. I mean, one of our E's is equity, or equitableness. And so is it equitable that we don't subsidize trees for people who may not be able to afford to put trees, but would put trees if there was some small subsidy? So those are questions, and I would like to think if we consider, and then there was $10,000 that we, I think, left. There was something for, line 1259, consultation, public education, and a survey. So I'm not sure we need to keep that money in the budget, because we have a newsletter, which I believe, and in talking to Ralph about this, he's very good at writing articles. We could put articles about the environment for public education in our own newsletters, and not pay for consulting, and not pay for surveys. So those are little things, and I don't know, it doesn't change the 6%. It's just, can we swap some things out so we don't lose sight of the importance of climate initiatives? So I throw that on the table.
Ralph?
Thanks for bringing this up, Elaine. You know, we all know, I think, that we are in a really bad situation with respect to climate change. It's the emergency of the century, and probably most of us appreciate the fact that we're behind the 8 ball in this. I'm very pleased with the community action plan that Mike has spearheaded, but I think that the actions which we're getting into now, which make the difference, we shouldn't be stepping back from them. We should be moving forward. I also think it's a bad message to our residents if we cut a budget that was started out at 32,000 and we cut it down to 11,000. That says that probably this isn't a priority for us. So I would agree with Elaine. I think we should go back and get the tree fence in and the tree program subsidy. And also we've cut, I'm not sure I'm on the right line here, but we've cut education for staff from, I think, 3,000 to 2,000. We should go back on that, because it's very important that staff are up to speed on their understanding of what's going on here. So I would like to see the climate change, the reduction be taken back, go back to where it was before. So I'm quite supportive of Elaine's suggestion on this.
Melinda? We can't hear you.
It's not muted at her end.
No.
Can't hear you.
We've lost you, Melinda. For some reason, we can't hear you. It doesn't look like you're muted, but your sound is not coming through.
There.
There.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. It just keeps coming up on my phone. I'm sorry. Thank you. I was saying my thank yous to everybody who's made the cuts. I think it's really disappointing that we have to make these cuts. I think that to now add it, to have a discussion about what to put back in, it just can't happen. I don't know why. If we're going to do something, why everything all has to cost money. One of the things that I was wondering was, where was the 8,900 in parks? Because what are we doing in our parks? Can I ask that to Kim?
Kim?
Good question, thank you, Counselor. The 8,900, all members of staff, department heads were asked to find places within our budgets where we could come up with some type of savings. And just following through with Deputy Mayor's comments regarding reduction in services, the $8,900 in parks basically is the skating rink budget for the 3 skating rinks that we put on each year. And when I looked back at the history of the skating rinks in the amount of days that are actually skatable thanks to warmer climate right now, we're not getting a full skating season out of all of our rinks. So my suggestion for Les was that if we needed to save somewhere in recreation, that the possibility could be with the skating rinks, because that is approximately what we pay each year to have the skating rinks up and running.
Okay, great, thank you. Can I just have a follow-up then there?
Yeah.
Because that's interesting, because we have, during these, and this is another small ticket item, our recreation, right? When you talk about what are the services that the town needs to provide, we need to provide safe roads, and we need to provide police and fire, and these other things. I know that the world is on fire, Ralph, but there's certain things that we can do that we have to do, and other things that we're trying to do. So one of the things is recreation, right? To try to provide things. And this past year, the Mono Center skating rink, we've had a wonderful volunteer for many years and would like to pass the baton to somebody, and there's nobody to pass it to. So the suggestion from an email of frustration was, well, why doesn't the town take it over? Why can't we pay staff to? Why does it have to be volunteers? And so this is an example that, yes, things are changing, and so maybe skating isn't in our future if there really is all the climate change. Though maybe in April we will be skating. It's hard to know exactly how things are going to go, but the things are. Possibly, user paying as opposed to just the town providing it. And so I think everything going forward needs to be up for discussion as to the extras that make Mono so special, maybe can't be. And the other one that jumps out at me that we were just talking about in another issue was the 195,000 for the library. And it's kind of like, well, what jumps to me is, how come libraries don't have the ability to have agreements with actual patrons as opposed to neighboring municipalities? There's lots of things that just might have to change as we go forward. But thanks for clarifying that, Kim. And I don't know whether we should be having a discussion now to put stuff in when we're finally at, we were all very unhappy with 6%. And the only answer to put in the small things like skating rinks and climate change initiatives and tree planting and things like that is to get our taxpayers to pay more.
Fred? Oh, Kim, sorry. Sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a point of clarification, just a couple of things. One is to clarify that the monies, the $8,900 would be for skating rinks for 2025, because we pay for the liners the year prior. So we've already purchased out of the 2023 budget the liners for this year's skating rink. So they have been purchased. And I'm happy to let you know, we did have a community member come forward for the Mono Center rink just prior to Christmas. And that individual has done an absolute dynamite job, and that rink is up and ready to go. So we've had a great group come forward for the Mono Center rink. The Mono College Cardinal Woods rink has also had a great group come forward, as has Purple Hill. So all three rinks for 2024 will be up and running. This will be a 2025 reduction in level of service because it's paid for in 2024.
Fred?
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm quite impressed by Councillor Capes and Mangfelow's suggestion about the reduction in the money we're spending on climate change. And I like the idea. I know it's hard. I can't get the exact figures, but we have about $10,600 in donations, and we cut about, whatever it was, 10,000 out of the climate change. Les, if it isn't too late, could we just swap them?
If it's a simple swap,
What?
then that's easy, whatever.
Yeah.
We'll take it out of donations 100% and take that dollar figure.
All right, do I have to put a motion?
Yes. When I put the motion on the floor.
Okay, then I'm,
Then it keeps the 6%.
yes.
Without messing
So I'm
with
with
that.
Mangfelow and Capes on this.
Okay. Yeah.
So just to clarify some points I made earlier, because I couldn't find things in my notes. So when I did add up the mileage, it was $27,600. The $29,425 was $10,600 from page 3, which is donations. And then I just wanted to ask a question about page 9, because you were very kind in listening to me the last time about my suggestions for cutting things in the budget. And we have $18,825 that if we stop with parking enforcement, I know that's crazy, but that we could save. So I just want to understand the thinking behind that, about that's not a good idea.
I
Don't do
had that discussion with the clerk, because he's
Yeah.
in charge of bylaw enforcement and parking enforcement. And if there's any cut in parking enforcement, he'll just pass it on to bylaw enforcement, because they're behind on that schedule. So it would be just a shifting of dollars again.
Okay, no, that's great, thank you.
I mean, it's a good suggestion, because I actually asked him that very question.
Thank you. And thank you for considering the other suggestions that you did take into account. I really appreciate that. That's okay.
I have a few questions. Les, how much of our budget is out of our control? In other words, we don't have a say, like obviously fire department, conservation authorities, where we have no discretion whatsoever. Is there a percentage that you can give us?
I have access to my slide deck, I'm not sure if Andrew does. There's a slide where I had the percentage of expenditures in our budget. So
Microphone, please.
I'm sorry. So I'm bringing up my slide deck with the percentage of expenditures for 2024. Protection services, bulk of that is fire
Yep.
and police, 18%.
Is 18% right there?
In transportation services, there's, which is about almost 56%. Some of that is the capital on that. But a big part of transportation services is page 13, the general operations of the roads. So out of that 56%, half of that is the roads. And then, of course, if you want the roads maintained, you need the equipment. So you're basically looking at at least 50% of the total budget that has to go forward.
Non-discretionary.
Now, we're not counting in staff salaries in there either. I mean, without staff, none of this happens. So,
Yeah, but I'm looking to be able to answer the question of the public, what's truly non-discretionary? And, you know, my hunch is that it's probably 50% plus.
I'd say probably 75%.
Okay? Okay,
Or higher.
I'm happy to make that case. And the other point to make is that anything we can save between now and the end of the year obviously gets carried forward into the next fiscal year. So I think we have to be very mindful of that if we have means of saving, notwithstanding the fact that we've budgeted for something, if we can come in under budget, it's all monies that are carried forward into the next fiscal year. What did we carry forward into this year?
Well, I was projecting a small surplus of a few $1,000s, so not a big amount, because we spent a lot in bylaw enforcement legal. But what saved the day was the third line slope repair. There was over 100,000 in savings there. So it kind of bounced off.
Okay. And I could get into hot water by saying this, but I think we need to send a very early message to the conservation authorities that we can no longer afford these double-digit increases, that they've got to sharpen their pencils. And I know that will get me into trouble with some people, but I think that, you know, any third parties, whether they conservation authorities or other entities that are expecting us to do what we've done in the past may be in for a bit of a surprise next year. Dead silence.
Well, I hear you. First of all, the CVC was not double-digit this year, but the other thing I would point out, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you, Mayor Creelman. However, once those agencies pass their budgets.
Yeah, but we have representatives on those boards, and they should be carrying forward the message that we just can't afford an average increase of 11% across the conservation authorities that we have.
I think both of Ralph and I did carry that message forward, but, and just to give you a forewarning, Melinda and I are probably going to have some more bad news for you on another, on other agencies, the fire boards, but that's for the future.
I know. Anyways, that's my thought. Ralph?
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I know and Adam's talking about like conservation. I don't do the number of my off the top of my head, but it's over 100,000 this year. And the increase was either 12 or 14%. There were 4 of us on the board that voted against it, including myself.
Good.
And I said, I just can't sell this to my community because we're trying to have an increase of about 3 or 4%. There were other members there, and I won't mention who they were, who are much more bullish about the conservation needs more staff, and we hired additional staff there. I think they have a planning problem, and they were getting behind on their planning, and so they wanted to hire more planning people. But we brought that message, and every time that the CVC has come to us and presented, except the last time, I guess I kind of gave up on it, I've said you can't continue with these large increases. Though the last one wasn't as bad as before. And we're mandated to accept whatever the Conservation Authority decides, and that's decided by the board, of course, and I'm only one person on the board. And it's difficult, John, to control these organizations unless you get majority of the board members in agreement.
I appreciate that, Ralph. Melinda?
Isn't that, thank you very much, that's a trickle-down situation, right? That the provincial government has decided to stop paying and say that you municipals, and then you got these level 1, level 2, and whatever, these mandatory things and so on. And so we're all still paying it, you know, so if the Ontario tax rate doesn't increased as much, but they've downloaded services to us, then the municipal increase has to happen, right? I mean, you can see where it comes from, but yeah, all those things are, like a large portion of it is all that mandatory level 1 stuff, right? I think it's called 1, 2, 3, right? 1?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Ralph?
So just to follow up a little bit on Fred and my comments, I think that next year we're going to have a different policy with respect to the budget because we have deferred things this year. We have not put money into reserves like we would like to, and it's going to come back and bite us. And so I think it's going to be a very difficult budget years in the few years to come. I'm not sure what the answer is, but we need to do some deep thinking about it.
Yeah, I agree. And to the issue of Bridge 5, if that is to proceed, I would hope that it does so on the basis of two things, possibly borrowing and redesign. I do not think that we should be spending extra money to straighten that road. It's been that way for 100 years plus, and I think that we can achieve some savings in terms of a reconstruction without having to straighten it out. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but I think it's one way of lessening that issue. And if we can find anything else that we can borrow against, I think you'll find that council will be willing to entertain that. Elaine?
I think too, and again, this is for, thinking for next year and future years, we need to go back to the core services that we are obligated to provide and make sure that we provide those, and anything outside of that needs to be considered for whether or not we can afford it. And I did want to just say, Melinda, if I'm not mistaken, there was a time when the patrons did pay to the libraries, and so the library did charge the patron, and the patron came back here and we gave them a refund. So paying the way we do now saved a whole bunch of administration, so that we didn't have to do it all. Right?
That's correct.
Yeah. And I don't want to
Okay.
take libraries away from anybody.
Any further?
I'm sorry, what was that?
I would not like to take library access away from anybody.
Oh, no, I was not saying to take it away at all.
No, I know.
I was just, yeah.
But it's cheaper for us to pay the per fee than it is for us to you go pay your fee at the library and then we'll reimburse you. So in the long run, it's better. But
Let the record show I'm not partaking in this discussion.
I think
Anything further?
your clerk's just finalizing that movement of funds around resolution.
Okay. So I have a motion, or do you have a motion that reflects the amendment?
Yeah, what I recommend, Your Worship, is we take the motion that you have and add, so it would be that council approves the 2024 final budget, except page 27, library services and notes, subject to the following amendment. Transfer $10,600 from council donation and add $10,600 to climate change environment.
Excellent.
Okay. So the motion has been read. A mover in Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Capes. Anything further? Any opposed to the motion as amended?
we will need to make a public announcement about not having those donation monies available, and that donation process will not take place, because I'm sure people are out there with their applications getting ready to come, and to apologize, or not apologize, but to say the money has been reallocated.
Yes.
And that will save.
We can't hear you, Elaine.
I'm so sorry. Just a comment to say that we need to make a public announcement to say that we have reallocated those funds, because people are probably lined up out there with their applications to apply for donations from council. But this is public money being invested in Mono for Mono's climate and Not that we don't appreciate the work they do, but we've had to take drastic measures with our budget, so.
And parenthetically, it should be pointed out that the county still has a very excellent community fund, as it were. Good criteria, well administered. And also the Dufferin Foundation, excellent organization, and they are robust and looking for things to contribute to. So it's not like there aren't other alternatives out there available for organizations to make pitches to.
Right, and awesome, and those applications for the Dufferin County grants are available now. So
They are.
if they want to apply, that's where to go.
Absolutely are.
The dog agrees.
Who let the dogs out? Okay, do I have any opposition to the motion?
No, just more.
The motion is
thanks for-
carried. And thank you again, Les. You also worked over the weekend, over the holidays on this and answered
Yeah,
questions.
I'd like to thank council for your support. It's been a tough process. And of course, thank you to my coworkers as well. They got beat up a little bit more this year compared to past budgets, but just a little warning, I guess they're going to get beat up some more next year.
More
But
chocolate
anyways,
from
thank you to
Fred.
my coworkers.
So that takes us to,
Pass a motion on the library budget.
oh, yes, I'm exiting on the basis of conflict.
Is there a separate motion on that?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, I have a motion that council approves the 2024 final budget, page 27, library services and note. Do I have a mover? Davy and Capes? Any comments? Anyone opposed to that motion? That motion passes.
And well done, I think.
So where are we up to, Schedule A?
Schedule A. So I have a motion that we accept Schedule A to this agenda, moved by Councillor Capes, seconded by Schedule A seconder, Councillor Manctalo. Has anyone submitted a list of items to the clerk? Fred?
I didn't? I thought I did. I sent you, I said I want to draw out item number 12 from the Schedule A. And you said,
I thought you were referring to an actual motion on an item.
no, I said I wanted to discuss item 12 of Schedule A, and I did let him know last Friday.
I would like to discuss that, too.
I would
All
like
right.
to, 3.
Okay. And my point, Mr. Clerk, is not, I'm not advocating here that we do what Amaranth has done. Amaranth has given a one-year notice to the county that they're going to withdraw from the county's building services, that's inspections and approvals. I, up until Amaranth decided to do this, wasn't even aware that we had, I thought building services were something like garbage, that it's been allocated to the county, the county just does it. I wasn't quite frankly even aware until Mayor Garrett's told me that that's what Amaranth is doing. So when he told me that and I discussed it with him, first of all, I don't know what the alternatives are. I assume, or at least I understand from Chris that you can get private sector firm to do your building services. I have no idea if that's better or worse for the town of Mono. My only thought was, I think in fairness to our residents and our taxpayers, possibly we should investigate this. I'm not, and the mayor probably is a bit different than I am on this, I'm not unhappy with the county's services right now, but I do think in fairness to our taxpayers, we should investigate this. The one thing that I'm puzzled about in the Amaranth agreement, it says the county provides the building services and that Amaranth has to, or there's a cost to that. But there's nothing in our budget list that says, I suspect by cost to that means it's in the county tax rate. So what I'd like to know in the investigation, Mr. Clerk, is if Amaranth withdraws, or if we were to withdraw, does that mean the county tax to our residents would drop down? I don't know quite, okay, let me give you this example. Orangeville has their own building services. Does that mean Orangeville residents pay a lower county assessment tax rate? So Orangeville residents are paying for county building services even though they're not using them?
Building services are self-funding through permit fees.
Through, okay.
Yeah.
Then that partly answers that question, so I'm not too worried. In any case, to my fellow counselors, without giving specific instructions to the clerk, I do think this is something that should be investigated. And could I ask him if over the next year, there's no hurry on this, it's something we could look into and maybe add to the unfinished business list. Investigate the continued use of county building services.
Les?
I'm not sure if you remember, Deputy Mayor, at one point Mono did have its own building department. Mayor John Creelman may remember back in the 90s. And upon retirement of that individual, it got moved up to the county. So we did at one point have our own building department.
Well, I did not know that. I still think it's a question that should be investigated. Mr. CAO, is it something we could ask the clerk to do?
Or the treasurer.
Or or the treasurer?
Sorry.
Deputy Mayor, I think
But
the
it needs-
treasurer and I would take that on. We would need direction, though, on this matter.
So you need a motion?
We should do it that way, yeah.
Add it to the unfinished
It's added to the list.
Then very quickly, I move that the staff prepare a report on the advisability of continuing with the county building services. Melinda has her hand up, too.
Yes, Melinda, sorry. Go ahead. And then Ralph.
Thank you very much. Sorry, Fred, before you get into the motion, just a clarification, because I didn't call up Chris or Gail and ask a question about their resolution. I just read the agreement. And so, and it's a 1989 or it's an old agreement. And so I read, I read into it that it was we're giving you notice because we want a new up-to-date agreement. It's because they actually are giving notice because they're terminating,
Yes.
because there are problems with it. And,
That's my assumption. They have told the county they're withdrawing.
okay, and so we are asking now to find out whether there are problems, whether we're finding that there's problems with it.
Essentially, yes, just,
Because whether you pay them permit fees or whether you go, say anything private sounds to me like it's just more expensive, but it is a service that, or you hire somebody and get a department of our own. There are costs, so it's the quality. So it's going to cost us regardless. So it's the quality that we want to look at, right?
yes. The advisability of continuing with the county building services. I think that was
Yeah.
my motion.
So Ralph and
All
then
right, thank you.
Elaine.
Okay.
Ralph, you're muted.
There it is, okay. You almost asked my question, Melinda. Fred, I thought as well that this was a chance for them to redo their agreement, but it sounds to me like you've had further discussions which suggest that they're looking at some improvements. Do you know what the problems have been?
No, I do not.
Okay.
So,
Oh, sorry.
Have we had, can I ask if the staff, have we had any feedback from residents and complaining about the building services or?
Yeah, we
any
have.
concerns?
Yes.
We have. Without
Okay.
taking a position on those complaints, we have had complaints about county building services in Mono.
Customer service. Yes.
so rather than look at this as a customer experience thing, because we would provide awesome experience, there's no question. But is this an opportunity, if I understand what the mayor just said, or what the answer from Les was, this is self-funding through building fees. What does that mean? So the business case could be that we would actually bring more money into the town. Do we get those building fees from the county when they're paid there? So,
Just a
Yeah,
minute.
clarify that.
I know the mayor said it's paid for by building fees, but going on memory, John, and I might be wrong, I don't think the building fees that the county are collecting pays for the building department.
It's supposed to.
It's supposed to.
And we've just recently had a report to bring those fees into line with something that is 100% cost recovery. If it turns out in a given year, we generate more fees than we have expenses, that money goes into a reserve against a year where the opposite is true. So it's not that it's a profit center, it's basically carrying forward a surplus to a year when building activity is down, and you don't want to get rid of your pool of talent. You want to keep people on, because in the following year, you may find that things pick up. So that's essentially how that system works.
I'm just suggesting it might be a benefit, so we need to know the whole cost benefit to us as well as the service benefit.
Yeah.
And technically, my motion hasn't got a second yet, so.
Okay, so there is a motion on the floor to add this to our to-do list. And I think in terms of staff working on it, they should be attuned to issues having to do with customer service and whether or not our residents are happy with how the county is running that system. And of course, you'd be getting probably more calls than I do about building issues. But I have been getting calls and I've been intervening, and it's a very difficult thing to do for a ratepayer because the chief building official has powers under the Building Code Act that are, I call them superpowers almost. They do not countenance criticism well. Mike? You were looking like you were about to say something. Sorry. No, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No,
Okay,
that's
there's a
fine, that's
motion
fine,
on-
I'm fine, Your Worship.
There's a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Any opposed to the motion? Seeing none, the motion is carried. Okay, that's Schedule A. Any other items on Schedule A, Fred? Elaine?
This is just a comment. I mean, number 15, support declaring the homelessness crisis. I think we all know that and we all support that. I don't think we need a separate motion about that. But I did just want to say that.
Ralph and Melinda, do you have anything from Schedule A?
That they notified the clerk about.
Right, that they've notified the clerk about?
Or submitted a
I no-
resolution in
I
advance.
notified you that I had nothing.
Thank you. And did I read the motion to accept Schedule A? I think I did. Okay. So that takes us to reports of staff and council. Let's start with Mike.
Thank you, Your Worship. So we're into 2024, and I know all staff will be looking forward to implementing this budget. So that's our update. That's the update from me.
Thank you. Anyone else? Fred?
Three things. First of all, at 11:55 on December 22nd, Friday, we did receive an official appeal to the Anderson designation. So that will be going to the OLT, and the process is pretty much identical to a Planning Act appeal. So that package is being put together and will be forwarded to the OLT. We have received a request for a flag raising in February. I haven't been able to confirm a date yet, but we received a request for Black History Month. We do already have a proclamation planned for the next council meeting, but you can anticipate hearing from me soon on scheduling a date for flying the Pan-African flag next month. And for those looking ahead all the way to summertime, the AMO conference is back in Ottawa this summer in August, the 18th to the 21st. If any members of council are considering going, keep in mind hotel accommodations are very limited, and you may want to pursue making reservations this month.
I would suggest if anyone wants to go, they should keep in mind the budget we just passed.
Okay. And that's all I have, Your Worship.
Kimberly?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a reminder that the plans for Winterfest are underway at the moment, or at least the final planning. So if everyone could please mark in their calendars, Sunday, February the 4th, 12 noon to 4 p.m. You'll be receiving an email from me very shortly in regards to what time you would like to serve the hot apple cider at. So, and any other participation that you're able to help in with the actual day, that would be great. We also have our Valentine's Euchre coming up on February the 9th. That's a Friday. We've had to move it to Menorah for this session just because of a space issue. So we're out at Menorah this year or for this session, and registrations are coming in for it. Just bringing that to your attention. And last but not least, just one more update on the skating rinks, and that's I'd like to put a shout out to staff member Dave Makowski. He too worked over the Christmas break in assisting the volunteers at the skating rinks with the installation of each of the rinks. Spent a number of hours of his time to help individuals, answered questions, went out there and actually helped them with their installations. And so thank you very much to Dave Makowski. Oh, and one last thing is our snowshoe lending library program is ready to hopefully start very, very soon. Our first day is supposed to be Thursday. It will be, we'll assess whether or not there is enough snow after today's snowfall to see whether or not we're ready to lend out the snowshoes. But again, a huge shout out to a number of recreation staff who have worked very hard and diligent on this program to get it up and running the way it has been.
Thank you. Fred?
Kimberly, on the last Euchre Day that you held, did you announce to staff who the second highest scorer was that evening?
Nobody we know?
I believe I'd have to look that up in my records. The name has, for some reason, gone from my brain. But hopefully, the winners will come back.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Council. There's not a lot to report. It was a pretty quiet holiday season for Public Works, which was nice compared to last year. Everybody was pretty busy last year, so Mother Nature's making up for it today. Hopefully, we got all the crews out and everything's going well so far. So not much there, but that's it for today.
Thank you. And Les, you don't have much to report.
Just one item. During the budget process, we did mention that we will be updating our DC bylaw. Our first meeting is January the 24th with our consultants, and that involves all department heads. And that's my report.
So apropos of the development charges update, I hope you'll bear in mind the suggestion of putting a different approach to residential housing and residential units to be done on a square footage basis as opposed to a flat rate. I don't know whether Watson has done that, has taken that approach with anyone else, but I think it's high time that we look at that, because there's no question in my mind that the larger homes put a bigger strain on municipal services, whether it be our roads or whether it be anything else for that matter, fire services. It takes longer to put out a fire in a big house than it does a small one. Okay. See, Ralph, do you have anything for us?
No, I don't, Your Honor.
Thank you. Melinda? Okay. Elaine?
I have no big reports, but I do want to ask a clarifying question to the clerk about the Anderson property. Has Heritage Committee been notified of that?
Yeah, they've been notified of the appeal.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't see it. Okay. That's all.
That's all? Okay,
That's
Fred?
my report.
Okay.
Just a couple of very minor things. We had a meeting last night, in between which I was trying to read all these documents that the town had sent me for in-camera session, but the Headwater Streams Committee met last night, and we had an excellent presentation from Phil Bird from Credit Valley on all the temperature monitoring work they've done on the West Credit. And people probably know this, but clearly, every time you put a pond on a stream, you're increasing the temperature of the downstream river, which is quite important for brook trout. The nice part of it was the river tends to recover as it goes away from that pond, but it was very good data. That's all I have to report.
Thank you. The only thing I have to report, and this will be of interest to Melinda, who I gather is going to Roma, we do have a session with the Attorney General to talk about some of the issues that are included in the motion passed today. However, the Attorney General, in response to a letter sent, and this is on, it's item number 9 on the Schedule A, punts a great many issues over to the Minister of Transportation. And the Minister of Transportation is apparently too busy to see us at the current moment. I've written to Sylvia Jones and asked that position be reconsidered. So hopefully we will make an impact there. And that's my report.
We're finished.
Okay, notices of motion.
I just want to bring forward a notice of motion that I will bring to the next council meeting about lighting, household lighting in the rural area as it relates to our desire to have a night sky. Is that enough information about that? So the number of lights and the type of light, I can bring you a picture that shows something that's lit up like it's a UFO landing station. So I think we need to take some measures about preserving our night sky within the bylaws. So I will bring a motion forward on that.
Work with Fred to get the deadlines for submission of
Yeah.
a motion so that we can consider it at the next
Yeah.
meeting.
No, I think you can get a third line.
Terrific. And also what our current regime is, because I understand that we do have some light trespass bylaw, but we also have a policy, and I'm not certain we have both. And I think the policy is more applicable in the case of site plan undertakings.
That's correct. We do have a dark sky policy with respect to site plan approvals and developments. And in our community standards, we do have a provision for lighting specifically at residences.
Okay. So I think what your objective is to build on what we have already in the community standards. Yeah. Okay.
Now we're finished.
Now, I have a motion that we introduce and give the necessary readings to a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of Council of the Town of Mono in Session 1, 2024, held on the 9th of January 2024, that it be signed by the Mayor and Clerk, sealed and engrossed in the bylaw book. Do I have a mover for that? Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Davey. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. And I have a motion that we adjourn this meeting at 11:44. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Capes, seconded by Councillor Mantalo. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.